Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen, our dear participants and speakers, good morning. We are very delighted to say welcome back to the second plenary session of the International Conference of Administrative Science, Public and Governance Studies, Universitas Indonesia. Thank you and welcome back. We are very delighted to welcome you on the session. We hope that you have enjoyed the coffee break that we have presented, as well as the parallel session that we presented this morning. And of course, on this session, we are very delighted to give another more interesting discussion that will be presented by two of our speakers today. We have Dr. Wilhora Chitra, Managing Director of the Chitra Consulting, and of course, Professor Dr. Ethan Berman from Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. And this plenary session will be guided by our moderator, Dr. Vishnu Juwono, Head of International Office, Faculty of Administrative Science, Universitas Indonesia. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please let us welcome Dr. Vishnu Juwono as our moderator for this plenary session. Dr. Vishnu, please welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Marida, for helping me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the plenary session. First of all, I would like to ask Professor Evan Berman coming to the stage, please. Give us applause, please. And the next presenter will be Dr. Wilhora Chitra. Please welcome to the stage, ma'am. Let me introduce Prof. Evan Berman. Obviously, he's a well-known professor of public management. He's a distinguished scholar. He got an award in 2016 recently, an outstanding scholarship award from American Society for Public Administration. So give an applause to him. And he has published like 14 books and over 140 articles. Yeah, this is an amazing feat for a professor. He's also a senior editor of Public Performance and Management Review and served on various editorial boards of many other leading journals. Meanwhile, Professor Dr. Wilhora Chitra is also a distinguished practitioner and scholar. Yeah. He is now a country director for Uni Asia for 4 years, and before that, he's also an executive director for a consulting company called Chitra and Associates. And before that, he's also an academician. He worked in leading China university called Zhejiang University, for 9 years in the psychology organization. Still is psychology organization. So that will be privileged to have these two distinguished speakers. So I will let Professor Evan Berman to start your presentation around 20 minutes, and then followed by Dr. Wilhora Chitra to give his presentation around 20 minutes. So the floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I was asked to talk today on ethics and corruption, and we know from the conversations that we've had so far that ethics and corruption is certainly a very important problem that constantly comes up. It is not an easy topic to talk about for sure. Most scholars in their career at some point will write about ethics, values, and corruption. And for me, I did that actually quite some years ago. So it is good to come back to this topic. ends, you know. And if there is one theme in what I will talk about, it is that actually we do know the theory and practice of anti-corruption in Asia is well established. And that's actually good news, because we know what to do. We have a lot of evidence about what to do. I don't talk about me because I'm already produced. So let me. So here's some charts that you're probably familiar with. The first chart shows. They promised me that this would be the point here. economic growth possible is having strong institutions that can really deal with economic growth and providing capital and providing technology and stuff. Fast the decision making, you're not, these countries can make executive decisions very fast. They're not hindered by politics of, let's say, Washington or something like so. Very strong. And the environment is very stable. So when you put these three things together, you immediately think about China, which falls in that category. Then, to a lesser extent, not being perfect myself. So we know the secret of economic growth in Asia, we really do. But there's a double paradox here. Here's a book written on China. And the paradox is this: if you are able to grow over here because you don't have strong anti-corruption controls, and you increase economic growth, that means there's more money coming into the system. Without anti-corruption controls means that that money will be used for more corruption. And that is a paradox. The more economic growth leads to more corruption. Is that a problem? Well, it does eventually, not in the short term, but in the midterm it does become a problem. The problem is that it becomes a threat to future economic growth. Because as a country is economically successful, the costs go up. And as the costs of doing business go up, then people go elsewhere. This is the experience of China, where companies are going to Vietnam, to Southeast Asia, instead of China. So at some point, countries do need to deal with this, or it becomes a threat to future economic growth. And in bad cases, there are also political implications. The Chinese are obviously very concerned about that in many ways. And the disparity, the inequity between the have and the have not, the 1% become increasingly rich and middle class and probably less so. Now, so in this group of countries over here, which in Indonesia, those part, we do need to deal with anti-corruption because it is a threat to the future. And the good news, once again, in Asia, you have wonderful examples of countries that have addressed the anti-corruption challenge as they went through strong economic growth. And the cases in the point of history are South Korea, which has a very low anti-corruption ranking, and now ranked about 50. Taiwan, which is the local and national elections full of corruption and illegal activity, now largely cleaned up, and Taiwan is now ranked 30th in the world. And of course, the Singapore too, which is a little bit different case, but also had very strong corruption until independence in 64, 65. At the same time, in the world, we also have examples of countries that did not meet the challenge and did backslide. So we have that under example. The case today is going to probably be Brazil, as opposed to a challenge of that. Strong economic growth, terrible corruption, political problems, and now backsliding in a very, very bad way. But formerly, you could think about Argentina and Mexico. So we have lessons in Asia about how to grow and then how to address the problem of anti-corruption. And I want to talk about those examples, successful examples in Asia about addressing anti-corruption. Before I do that, this is just a recent 2017. Again, corruption was holding ASEAN back. There's strong awareness that you can have economic growth for some time, but at some point it becomes a problem. This is from the Global Competitiveness report. This is asking businesses in the world what is the factor that the most holding back. The second most important is corruption. The most problematic factor doing business. The first important factor there is inadequate supply of infrastructure. The third is inefficient government bureaucracy, and of course those are also very strongly linked to corruption. So one way or another, when countries doing business in places like ASEAN, corruption is the number one problem. So the theory that I just said before about you can increase economic growth, but at some point it'll hold you back, that is already the reality for this part of the world. It must deal with that. And in truth, in fact, like Indonesia has. And in ASEAN, Indonesia is one of the better cases of dealing with anti-corruption. Before I go on, I just want to look at this table that shows the many ways in which it shows up. There's a tendency to want to put everything in monetary terms, and you can imagine where that comes from. But in the case of corruption, that doesn't work so well. On the private side, the cost of corruption is obviously the cost of business transactions, the greasing or sanding, and what have you. The real cost of the private sector is that firms it's not often that you find strongly locally competitive industries. And if they do, in Brazil would be a case, it's because they're shielding themselves off from the local economy. Embraer airline company would be an example of a Brazilian company that shielded itself off and been able to be successful. On the public side, when you think about the morning news of this senior official or that politician being indicted, being charged with major briberies, and that's a cost. But the real cost in my mind is that government officials who are concerned about taking advantage of the corruption environment are not developing new programs. The real cost to society is government not doing its job or doing its job well enough or having enough programs. And you cannot easily measure that. So much of the cost of corruption in this agreement is actually unmeasurable. Not only because corruption is dark and black, but simply the real cost is what is not happening. And in my own research these days, I think where we are right now is not about finding fault in somebody's reasoning, but as a scholar, can you see what is not happening? That is where we are right now. Not what's happening wrong, but what is not happening, the black hole. And corruption creates a lot of black holes. And again, there's evidence that anti-corruption efforts are on the radar in ASEAN countries. I'm a little disappointed in the ASEAN community. I'm not doing so much directly on anti-corruption. The things that they're doing to contribute, such as more ensuring compliance with anti-money laundering laws, dealing with increasing trade and transparency around that. So I think the ASEAN community is doing things that de facto increase transparency and in that way deal with anti-corruption. But perhaps more to be done. Now very quickly, the theory of anti-corruption. This is the theory of anti-corruption that is well established. To reduce corruption, you have to reduce opportunity. We'll talk about that. So that's why e-government is very important, because it reduces face-to-face transactions. And yesterday the minister, so the Vice Minister Mentan spoke about using e-government in the selection process. It's not only faster, but it's less corrupt. So you reduce the opportunity for corruption. Another one very important in ASEAN is increasing inspection. So I will show many examples of that. I think that's the main reason of anti-corruption agencies. We give a big power to do more inspection. Beyond that, we try to reduce the incentive of public officials and private officials. And increasing public awareness is very important because a lot of the tips on corruption, who is doing what, come from the general public. And the interesting thing about corruption is that how it increases one's vulnerability. When the public can just call in and say, I have evidence of, or I've seen such and so, this is a great aid for the anti-corruption effort. So this is the theory, I believe it is well and true, it's truly tested, and we'll get some examples of that. Now the only problem is that what causes corruption. There's also agreement that what causes corruption on many different factors. I don't have time to go over this particular slide for you. But there are things like, whether there are not jobs, organized crimes, salaries are too low, a lot of red tape, all these things lead to corruption, and how do you attack those things? So there's a broad theory. What I want to give you is there's a broad theory of anti-corruption and a narrow targeted one. The broader view is that you have to deal with economics, like with economic standards. If people have more income, they have more to lose with their food inspection. Public awareness, changing the laws or social practices, the culture, the type of culture of the place, changing the culture. The organizational practices, we talk about leadership, very important. Politics and government. So this is not government. Politics is a source of corruption. The question is, even in my own mind, if I can delicately say, I wonder if you can have elections in democracy that are totally corruption-free. I don't think that's possible. I don't think so. And then finally, on the legal side, more inspection and better judges. And just this last week, I think in Indonesia, that's the case around that were disappointed. Now, this is difficult to read, but this is some research 20 years ago, asking experts on anti-corruption what is the most effective strategy to deal with this. And for low-income countries, the most effective strategy is inspection. Inspection in low-income countries, internal control and inspection, most important strategy. So we'll talk about that. Again, that follows from the theory. This is the practice validating the theory, if you will. For high-income countries, the order is a little bit different, but for low-income countries, definitely just before I go on, in inspection, I don't have time for this, but here are some specific practices of public sector corruption, and you can see how inspection would clearly make an impact in reducing this. So for low-level officials, they speak money, little favor, bureaucrat love red tape. If you can inspect that in creative ways, and because you have power, like, wait, how did you get this extra money to buy the car? If you have the investigative power, you can go to that. Mid-level, you see that so much. I was in Hanoi last year, and there's some areas in Hanoi that have grown up, and said, the winning public officials live here, but how did they afford these houses? Well, they knew it would be developed, they had this insider knowledge, their families could buy the properties, and I'm sure you have this kind of stuff as well here in Indonesia. So mid-level, a different kind of corruption. Top level, even higher level. But I want to say that in India, we have top levels, is really dangerous. They get a lot of threats against their lives and the lives of their family, from businesses that want certain favors. So they also need protection. It's not easy to be a senior civil servant in some countries. The political level, and of course across institutional corruption and intimidation of judges, reporters, and stuff like so. So you can see how inspection and transparency can really be used to reduce some of those practices on a case-by-case basis. This figure also shows something else, is that reducing this alone doesn't deal with the consequences of corruption. For me, these are the consequences of corruption, are officials not going the extra miles, government offices not making programs better, not addressing the policy challenges, not dealing with the resilience and future of the country. When you're engaged in this, you have less of this, and this is why countries, I believe, don't develop as much. So you also need improved management, and many of the other panels of this conference talk about improving management. I'm focusing on reducing this rather than improving management. So the second view of anti-corruption in Asia is around a targeted form, a targeted view that puts central anti-corruption agencies as a focal point. And the lessons from history come from Singapore and from Hong Kong. And John Qua is a well-known author to us. He did some fact-based research, this was published in 2009, looking at different countries in Asia and how they manage anti-corruption. So you have some countries, what he called Pact 1, that have many anti-corruption laws. But the problem in Asia is not laws. We have wonderful laws. This is not the problem. We have laws for everything. This is not a problem. But the point is they don't have, so these countries like Mongolia or Papua New Guinea don't have an anti-corruption agency. And they tend to have very low, very high corruption scores, if you want to put it that way. The second pattern is countries that have anti-corruption laws with multiple anti-corruption agencies. China in the past, China, India, Philippines following that. When you study those countries, there are major gaps between the authorities and the funding and the capacities of those anti-corruption agencies, and anti-corruption agencies fall between the cracks. It is, especially in India, it's well managed by politicians to create these kinds of gaps so that the anti-corruption effort on the inspection and the transparency side is not effective. And where it is effective, according to John Qua, is where you have single anti-corruption agencies, Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand, and to some extent, South Korea are examples of that. And in all those countries have increased their transparency rating dramatically. So he believes that based on this historical lesson, that having a single anti-corruption agency is important. Now, there are two things. What should these agencies do? And two, how would it work in a large country? And I'll address both of those. The conditions for a good anti-corruption agency and why that works in dealing with these things is of course that the agency itself must be incorruptible. And that you cannot take for granted. But that's so giving great that independence is important. And focusing on corruption opportunities in vulnerable agencies like police and places that deal with crime. But in all cases, commitment from political leadership is critical. There is no case of a country in the world that's succeeding in anti-corruption that did not have strong political leadership. And political leadership, interestingly, often finds advantage in anti-corruption because it helps with the next election. So this works. But what works here, this is very important here, is necessary, is that these countries that are successful have a very broad definition of corruption, such as any gratitude, any service, any favor, any advantage to be investigated. It's not narrowly defined, it's broadly defined. Lack of words in the law, if you will define it. Extensive investigative powers that you can investigate not only the receiver, but the giver, and their families, and their business associates, and any bank account, anywhere, anytime. That people who are suspected of corruption can be taken into custody so that they cannot destroy evidence. So the question is whether or not these powers exist in the country. This is the documented historical record that we have now. So Hong Kong is an example of that. And the anti-corruption agency there have very strong powers on inspection, prevention, and community relations. Community relations is to encourage people to call in for concerns. The prevention, very interesting. I'll talk about leadership in just a second. Imagine that you are a leader, echelon 1 or echelon 2, in a ministry, and you want to reduce corruption in some way in your ministry. What better way than having to shoulder it yourself and make you vulnerable? What better way to bring in a strong anti-corruption agency to inspect the vulnerable areas and to tell you what you need to do? So this kind of agency becomes kind of an ally of the senior leadership in ministries and the president who wants to make a difference. This is extremely helpful where it works. The thing about Singapore and Hong Kong, they're very small countries. So how does this work in a large country? Well, here's China for you. They've just punished 1.3 million civil servants. I think we should seriously look at China, the model. No, I'm not saying you want the Chinese system. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is we look at their administrative practices and learn from them. They've been able to drill down to the national level to go to the very local levels. And they've come across very many interesting forms of public sector corruption. Like this is the city hall of a small village. Obviously, there's something wrong in government spending there. And also, they have learned also from Hong Kong and Singapore, they have many different anti-corruption agencies. They are now creating one new powerful agency. And the national level also goes to different local areas. That would be a good model for a large country like Indonesia. But we do have problems in different islands and in different localities. So the national level can send groups there with strong investigative powers and research that. We know how to do this in Asia. And our examples come from Asia. They're not imposed from outside of Asia. They're developed here in Asia. And the only thing that we are missing are scholars and journalists who are looking abroad to document what other countries are doing so well. There's a few other things, and I'm running out of time. South Korea is the poster child for using e-government for anti-corruption. That goes back 20, 30 years. And Korea has increased its score dramatically from a very low score to now ranking around 50 in the world. Here is the Hong Kong Anti-Corruption Agency. They also have this is a TV series now. Go watch an ICAC Investigators. This is a very popular TV series on anti-corruption detectives winning the day. And they on Facebook, they're reaching teenagers to change mindsets and prevention. And prevention is really, these are people who go into the ministry, into the departments and identify areas where corruption could be occurring without necessarily causing an accusation. Very, very helpful for change. The leadership paradox is, I don't have time for this, but the leadership, we know how leaders can increase ethical climate. Much of this research goes back to 1994. There was a flurry of articles I published on that, Harvard Business Review published major articles, I looked public versus crime and so. We know how leaders can reduce ethical wrongdoing in their organizations. 25 years old and it still works. There's really nothing new. And 10 years after that, 2004, we published an article that actually got an award in the Journal of Public Integrity that actually shows in 500 American cities how moral leadership and ethical leadership from senior managers and training and code of ethics, all of that can reduce the corruption and actually eventually be linked to perception of citizen trust. We know this. This is 2004. But here's the paradox, is that you have also in Indonesia top leaders who are making excellent progress in dealing with corruption and ethics in their organizations. But it's the nature of the public sector that these people move on. And what happens after they move on? Then somebody else comes in with a different priority and corruption picks up again. So I call this the leadership paradox, it's not enough. And the lesson is, leadership is not enough. We need an ecosystem of integrity. Leadership is necessary, but it also must be an ecosystem. So the anti-corruption agency works so well in Asia because it contributes to an ecosystem around the organization of integrity. The model that we have here these days is called the National Integrity System. It's internationally accepted. This is in New Zealand. Different pillars. The ethics of the legislative branch, executive branch, the judiciary, a whole range of different areas of society, which all should have strong integrity components. If you want to know exactly what they should be for each of those pillars, this is what the primary objective would be. And again, the anti-corruption agency can help. They can write reports, they can investigate all these things and bring that to light. This is the frontier. This is what we're aiming for in a corruption-free or less corrupt country. This also comes from Australian government. So everybody is viewing it now in this broader term, if you will. This is a page you're interested in New Zealand. Why does New Zealand have this high ranking? We have people coming from around the world to New Zealand wanting the mystery of anti-corruption. New Zealand is difficult because New Zealand never had high corruption. But we can't tell you what in this national integrity system why it works so well. So one is about having sophisticated, comprehensive approaches to transparency and accountability. They're built into the system. They're not an afterthought. When you design a program in New Zealand, you think from the beginning how is accountability and transparency going to happen, and performance and excellence built into getting this in the mindset now of the people there. The cabinet manual is very clear about what ministers and prime ministers can and cannot do. And they're held accountable to that by the news and the ombudsman and like so. In the public agencies, I can tell you that if there's any suspicion of any corruption or wrongdoing, that will kill a person's career in New Zealand. Given how small New Zealand is, I'm not quite sure where you would go to after that. That's the culture. The ombudsman, the office of auditor general, New Zealand doesn't have an anti-corruption agency, but these organizations function as it. They are very strong. The courts the integrity of the courts is beyond question in New Zealand, beyond question. Law enforcement, the police is incorruptible. There's no faster way, I think, to go to jail in New Zealand than to offer something to a policeman that will guarantee the problem for you. So these are the kind of cultures that we're looking to aim for. And again, this is part of Asia too. So Asia has this whole broad range of experiences, and I think it's just a matter of scholarships to be sharing that. And it's wonderful that countries like Indonesia are moving forward in that direction. Obviously, there's more work to be done. Whatever forces are driving it, wonderful. Let's go have more of it. Whatever the motivation is, this is the right direction. So that is my story. I know my time. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at this. So this is my conclusions, if you will. We can just summarize a broad range of practices. A starting point for change in Asia, usually about very effective anti-corruption agencies, because they support the leadership efforts in the ministries and departments, and they give good powers that are controlled and much inspection. We do know it requires political support, and that's been usually the problem in countries. Organizational leadership matters, but the goal in the end is a mutually reinforcing ecosystem of integrity. That is the ultimate goal that we are aiming for. That's my story. And I'm sticking to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Evan from Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. So it is an excellent presentation, but not going to waste any time. I will let Dr. Marachitra to give his next presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pak Vishnu. Good morning or good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. That's now is my turn. So after we hear the lecture from Professor Beckman, so about corruption, I think we move forward to the other area So I'm going to talk about strategic governance and Asian leadership readiness towards regional cooperations. I think we hear the topics of this conference. We are talking about promoting collaborative governance. We are talking about collaboration. We are talking about leadership. In my paper, so I would like to point out more on the impact of the regional cooperations. What does it mean for us, and what needs to be done in order to prepare how to deal with this more and more increasingly collaborations in the region. I don't need to explain. I was 14 years in Germany, 10 years in China, and now back in Indonesia, but still living in both countries, Indonesia and China. So I think my identity is moving between academic and consulting business. Used to be a professor, but always working also in consultancy, mostly for German companies, for large projects, dealing with the topics of culture, talent, and change. And most of my research is actually focused more on the cross-cultural collaborations, internationalizations, and then focusing on how to make a better leader for the global world. I will divide my speech into 4 areas. Try to emphasize what are the new trends in the regional cooperations. Then second is the strategic governance and leadership across borders. I'm not doing that. Then after that is regional cooperation readiness of Asian leaders. Then last is maybe more focused on global Indonesia itself, lessons learned, what can be done in order to prepare Indonesians for the globalized world. We saw that we hear already in Indonesia, so in the last 3-4 years, the name of the ASEAN Economic Community. I know also from the list there are some papers talking about Asian Economic Communities. So means that the collaborations in these regions will be more and more. Not only in terms of trading and investment, but also geopolitics, like tourism, and mean that we will have more and more collaborations within the ASEAN. I just come back from China. I was 2 weeks there. You know that everybody in China now talking about EIU in there. So there are no initiative from the Chinese government. This is quite a big campaign that will promote the regional cooperation within the region, not only in Asia but also in Europe. And there is quite a drive, a lot of money that will be spent, that will be invested in this collaboration, in this regional collaboration. Means here what I want to say is the globalizations or the collaborations, so international collaborations, is not only now between East and West, what we do in the past, but there will be more and more collaborations within Asia, the collaboration East and East, which say also the collaboration style or the channels in the collaborations are quite different. In particular from the soft issue side, how to collaborate with each other, so within Asia. If we talk about regional cooperation, then the question is how can we work together? So in the collaboration in the region, basically we can define into 4 different styles. Collaborations mean just only exporting or importing, buying and selling. Or second type is you do like some strategic alliance. The third type is international joint venture. Or the fourth type is you open your own company in that country. I would like to point out the third type, the international joint venture. As this is the type that will be most common. If you enter a new country, then one of the easier and the fastest way to do this collaboration is international joint venture. International joint venture have some advantages like local knowledge. You have like local resources, local network. You share the risk. You share capital. You may build like more cost effective way in doing business. And also in some area, in some company, in some countries, there's a legal requirement that if you enter some kind of business, you have to have a local partner. I think it's in Indonesia, in China, it's a lot of area, you have to have a local partner, legal requirement. That is the international joint venture is one of the type where you have to do a lot of collaboration. And international joint venture, because it's a joint venture, it shows already like some of the challenges in the collaboration. We have done one case study research in China. The case study is about Chinese-German joint venture, international joint venture, Chinese-German international joint venture with 4,000 employees. And we do a comprehensive qualitative and quantitative analysis, and this is the results that we have found out. What are the critical challenges of structural governance in the regional cooperations? In this case, is in the type of international joint venture. We found out 5 different factors where the core of the critical challenge is the organizational identifications of the top leaders. Quite interesting, so we found out there, so we did the interview, we did quite large number of interview from the staff level up to the CEO level. Then in this international joint venture, organizational identification is one of the critical challenges. As we did the interview, you can see that in people talking about we, the people in this international joint venture mean different things. At the local level, if you talk about we, they mean the international joint venture itself. But the higher you go, the more you will hear that if the top leader is talking about the we, he means including the mother company. Then suddenly you have like 3 different kinds of a we. We in terms of the international joint venture, we in terms of the mother company from the host, and the we in terms of the mother company of the guest. And if we did literature review, then we found out one of the core challenges or one of the key success factors in joint venture, that's the national joint venture, is the organizational identification. In terms of the international joint venture, then the organizational identifications is becoming more as a critical success factor. And in the international joint venture, the organizational identifications becoming even more difficult because there you got like some overlap between organizational identification and national identification. This is one thing. Then the other one is you have also like some shareholder influence and the IGV structure that will influence the way how you identify yourself. And the challenge as well is in the organizational identifications. If the top leaders are not identifying themselves, so with the international joint venture, then the decisions, you have a lot of conflict of interest at top. Then it means that the strategy governance is becoming more difficult. The other one, what we saw here, if you see the arrow show like the influence from each of the factors. The organizational identifications influence the way how you focus your business. Your organizational identifications influence the way you communicate with each other. Then the organizational identifications influence also the cross-cultural understanding. But the influencing is not only one way, but it's actually both ways. Meaning that on the one side, your business models suddenly becoming like you have like 2 different business models. Because of the different business models, it will strengthen the differences in the organizational identification. Because of the organizational identification, because of international joint venture that are observed, you have like parallel communication platform. The parallel communication platform will make that the organizational identification, organizational identification becoming even more separate. Last but not least, the issues of the cross-cultural understanding. So we have like during the interview, for example, The story happened a few years ago. That the German said, how difficult is it to work in China? The Chinese doesn't work effectively. They don't work efficiency. A few years ago, we had an accident in our factory. And we, the German, we just sent our factory leader, the director of production. The Chinese, all the directors, come to the accident place. And the German said, it is just ineffective. What can the finance director do in the accidents? At the same time, the Chinese leaders told the others the same story with a different perspective. The Chinese just say, hold up, take a look. That the German doesn't really identify himself with the company. We had a big accident happening. And the German just only the production director appeared in the accident place. The accident happened already for numbers of years, but nobody talked about that. And the misunderstanding just only everybody say that the other part is not really taking care of the company. Okay, in the governance itself, in the International Center, you have the challenge how you set your objective. Because the influence of the other company in some profit that the other company aims it is a high profit. Other company we say it's not enough. As the story is happening, in Germany there was the 2008 there was the economic crisis, but China is still growing. Then the other company say that so okay, you should deliver more profit to the head office. But at the same time, the Chinese counterpart, which is a state-owned enterprises, got the pressure from the government. The most important one is to keep the job and not to increase the profit. Then you have like a different objective in governing the business. How it is structured in the organizational structure? How you define the power to take the responsibility for what kind of function? Then you have like some historical background. If we take a look in these specific cases in the international joint venture, there is a change in the society. Before the economic crisis, in the international joint venture in China, usually the Chinese will follow the West. But after 2008, the Chinese gained its own self-confidence. Then the collaborations will have like a different style. Then we work like the way how you do the international assignment, work under the cost management, then the top leaders got. Often is we will have like a different CPI that are assigned in the head office. The meaning of it here, how we perceive. What are important here is how everybody feel that the company belongs to me. Yeah. If I try to summarize here, potential conflict of object and routine in the international joint venture. The first one is the influence of the parent company. Here we are talking about the governance. The culture background, the difference role as the host and guest. The culture and the instruction system that was done in the head office. The performance management in the head office. For most of the top leaders, usually the international joint venture is a temporary career station. They think about what are the next time. If you try to make it more complicated in terms of the international joint venture, one of the you can say classical studies from Austin he can decide. But the counterparts, which are sent from the high Protestant country, for example, like China, Indonesia, usually they are the representatives of the mother company, but they don't have the decision power. Then you have a group of the top leaders, but the group of top leaders actually have different power or have different authority what they can do. It shows that in the international joint venture, you need like so-called cross-cultural competence. If you talk about international collaborations, everybody knows that if you do business with a different country, if you do like some joint projects with people from different countries, you need a kind of adapt to each other. If I try to do, I think we can find out that in any culture, there is some saying that say that you need to adapt. Like in German, they say that underline under system. In Chinese, we say that successful. Then in Indonesia, like underline belalang. In short, you need to adapt. But if we try to do more careful, we have done some research in Germany, in China, and in Indonesia. Actually, the term of adaptations have a difference meaning. In Germany, we are talking about tolerance. Tolerance means that you need to understand the others in order to be able to work together. Understanding is very important. Tolerance means also you emphasize the differences. You try to understand the differences. If you understand the differences, you can work with each other much more better. In China, our research show that we emphasize what we call differences harmonization. Means that so if we work together with all our differences, the most important one is we talk about our communities. If we make our communities bigger, then the differences become absolute. The Indonesian way is different. We call it China sensitive pasar. We don't need to understand. We don't make also our communities bigger, but we need to. We have to look like what are the borders that we don't talk to each other. As long as the border doesn't talk, then we can go better. Mean that the areas of the cross-cultural competence or cross-cultural adaptation is actually also unique in this country. Another research that there is a research about what are that we learn the differences between Indonesian way in dealing with cultural differences and Chinese way in dealing with the cultural differences. But what I want to say is this one. This is a research that we did in Indonesia, in Singapore and China. We interviewed around 300 publishers there to find out what makes the Indonesian, Singaporean and Chinese successful in that country. Quite interesting is that what we sometimes is with who you are depends on where you are. Mean that, for example, Singaporean in China and Indonesia are appreciated in a different way. In China, the Chinese partner and Chinese co-worker say that they appreciate working together with the Singaporean expat because most of the Singaporean are international. They are good at mining. Basically, they say that the Singaporean can help them to bridge between the Chinese culture and the Western culture. But we asked the Indonesian counterpart of the Singaporean expatriates in Indonesia. None of the Indonesians say that they need a culture bridge in dealing with the Western people. But the Indonesians say that they like working with the Singaporean because the Singaporean push them to the next level in terms of performance. None of the Chinese say that because the Chinese themselves are already quite ambitious. But the Indonesians say that. And the Indonesians say that working with the Chinese, we are pushed to work more professional. Meaning the same Singaporean, but will be perceived differently in China and Indonesia. Then we ask like the Chinese expat in Indonesia and the Indonesian expat in China. In our analysis, Chinese companies in Indonesia usually, in terms of the business performance, they are successful in quite short time. The Indonesian companies in China usually take more time. But if you talk with the Indonesian co-worker in Chinese company in Indonesia, most of them doesn't build the loyalty to the company. Because we agreement, we work, we form, and after that they left. While in Indonesian companies in China, usually they can attract Chinese to become loyal because the leaders are perceived as someone who are warm, appreciate differences, integrator, while the Chinese leaders are perceived as someone who push personal advancement, systematic improvement. These are quite different ways. We brought up, we interviewed some of the Chinese leaders, even after staying like 2 or 3 years in Indonesia. Still, he is always saying that the Indonesian are Muslim. But actually, Indonesia, we have different slavery, not just only one. While the Indonesian in China, after 3 months, Indonesia always trying to differentiate. Yes, the Chinese and the Vietnamese are different. The Vietnamese and the Cantonese are different. Mean that because we Indonesians used to live in this kind of condition with all this diversity and try always to attribute something to the differences. Okay, if we try to work on the places that we got here, first is what I'm trying to say in terms of this regional cooperations, you need a higher level of culture sensitivity and the cultural differences. It is something that is sounds at the beginning not so important, but a lot of business deal went wrong because people cannot understand or cannot appreciate these other differences. And the second is we will see more and more collaborations within the East, between ASEAN. And if you try to take a look on the reasons, the literature, there are not so many reasons about what are the challenges being Korean doing business in Indonesia. What are the challenges for Indonesia doing business in China? Well, if you take a look like what are the challenges for doing business in the US, a lot of literature. If you try to take a look at the literature in doing business like for the German people working in China, and then we read the recommendation, we cannot use Eastern Asia because our challenges are different. Meaning there is some needs on that one. Because this collaboration will be more and more. We say that in terms of the strategic governance, what are important is talking about the purpose, talking about the business objective. Often people say that so it's not so important. We know that business is business, but business is really quite different. In terms of do you want to how high the profit, how fast you would like to get the profit. What are your real objective on the business? Second is you need to find out what are the practice perspective, and then what kind of culture you want to build in this international manufacturing. Maybe you can do it so by working on a real customer case. In terms of Indonesia, from number of research that I have done, if I'm trying to summarize, Indonesia usually have some specs in terms of the critical experiences. Exposure to diverse experiences is quite critical there. Important is how we can use early experiences on intercultural learning. We know now a lot of universities have a target. For example, like in China, in my university, the target is every student as they finish bachelor degree, give us an international experience. And then the university also give like some budget. I think like 5,000, around 10 million rupiah for every student within the 4 years. Then they can get like some subsidy to get like some international experience. And the critical things that also to be success is technical competence. Because if you compare with the other Asian countries, like the Chinese are more ambitious than the Indonesian. The Indian are more positive. That means that for Indonesia to be successful outside Indonesia, the technical competence is quite important. What we found out is a lot of Indonesian making global career, they can achieve the mid level, but they have a lot of difficulties to move forward to the top level. And then one of the differences that we found out between Indonesian who achieve the top level and Indonesian who are staying at the mid level in the global companies are the one with the higher technical competence. Second is patient to learn. The last but not least, the self-confidence of Indonesia in dealing with the innovation. Maybe just short. If we, because I spent a number of years in China, if we talk about the collaboration in Asia, dealing with the Chinese, understand that most of the Chinese leaders have this three characteristics. First is pragmatic results driven. The most important was is the results. I think we say that no matter is black cat or white cat, the most important is the cat, the rat. Second is hierarchy or relationship. I think in Indonesia we know that pemimpin halus dan pemimpin kasar. We perceive the Chinese, the good Chinese character leader in Indonesia we perceive as kasar. But the good Indonesian leader halus means for Chinese is weak. We must know what they are. We hear a lot of the Chinese Americans who say that our Indonesian leader are weak leader. But equally in Indonesia we will say ini pemimpin halus. Seorang pemimpin yang berkarakter halus. Then important is strong relationship and trust. In order to send someone to another country, I think it's not just only for Chinese. More important is the strong professional, strong competence. The second is the affinity to the culture that we are going to do. If you like the culture, for example, if you go to Korea, you like the Korean drama, that's already a good start. Here is coming the objective. Last but not least, this is like our recommendation how to inform the leaders, getting familiar with the international business activities, working with the foreign colleagues, maybe work in the international project, and intensive working and using a good as the starting points to build the competencies for future leaders who can work, who will feel at home working outside their countries. Okay, that's all what I want to share. Hope it gives you some insights on what are the challenges in this cooperations in the regional market.
Thank you so much, for your excellent presentation. So let me summarize these two distinguished speakers. Professor Herman have given quite a comprehensive presentation, not just in terms of theory, but he also made a comparative study, a number of cases of anti-corruption in Asia Pacific countries, in which he highlighted about the anti-corruption effort in Hong Kong. And he thinks that leadership matters, and in the end, the goal is to make reinforcing ecosystem integrity. That's the goal that we advocate. Meanwhile, Dr. Borachita, he uses practical experience in more than 10 years in Germany, 9 years in China. So he conducted a number of studies using a number of countries like Singapore and China, and he argued that we need to learn about the culture in which the business has to navigate, and then of course his practical and research studies focusing on China, and he gave a lot of examples in China about the business. And I will continue with the question and answer. We still have 20 minutes for question and answer. There's a Professor Asmar Kasim from University of Indonesia. Let me give Professor Asmar Kasim is there a mic to give to the questioner?
I would like to ask Professor Herman, you mentioned that there are a lot of costs of corruption. I believe that because you are anti-corruption. But for the corruption, the sea corruption has a lot of them
physics, innovation of the design and physical. Okay, I will direct my question to Professor Evans and Dr. Howard. Professor Evans, as you know, corruption and prostitution is the oldest profession in the world, right? And then I know that New Zealand, your country, is the cleanest government in the world. That there is no anti-corruption agency. Okay, and back to your presentation, I would like to ask you about bribery. Bribery to give the money to the officer or congressman to change the public policy. I'm experiencing this kind of bribery, and this many bribery happen in the local government, even in the government or congressman in Indonesia. Why do you opinion how to overcome this problem? Because I know that this bribery is the way or the gate come to the corruption, and to that horror. I'm not following your explanation about IGV. What is the abbreviation of IGV? It's IGV structure is concerning about the critical characteristic of the strategic governance in regional cooperation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. One last question for this first session. Q&A. I think in the back, way back, I think I'll give ladies first. Even though,
Thank you.
okay.
I'd like to ask you about as your explanation about the anti-corruption, one of the ways to fight fraud and corruption through e-procurement. And in Indonesia have implemented this e-procurement around 2012. As I know, one way to evaluate this implementation, when there is an irregularity, they always consider the aspects like time and then transparency and also the cost. What I want to ask is there any other aspect that should be considered to assess instead of these three aspects to show that the government really commitment regarding to this corruption? Thank you.
Could you give the three aspects?
Cost, time, and transparency.
Cost,
Time.
time, and transparency.
Yes.
Okay. I'll give Professor Evan Rahman to respond to the questions. The first three questions.
When it comes to corruption, I think people have their own private theories too. And so some people might look at it as the benefit of the person receiving the corruption and the cost to the person receiving the corruption. The question about prostitution, bribery, how some people who are being critically examined how countries that are ranked number 1, 2, 3, 4 in the world get that ranking, and whether the measurement is in fact correct. There are many people who suspect that a certain prime minister or a certain may have benefited in some particular way. And where you put that into a legal corruption or other form of corruption, question mark. So I think every country struggles with this. I don't think we will get corruption free. I don't think that is, as long as we are human beings, I don't think that's going to happen. But when we practice reducing opportunity, increasing inspection, reducing the incentive of the punishment when you get lost, and increasing public awareness, I think a lot of progress can be made. A lot of progress can be made that makes a country or location more competitive in the world to attract foreign direct investment in a place where people from outside can come and be successful. Because when you have high corruption, you don't have things, people from abroad or outside the area may not want to invest. They look elsewhere and say, this is too risky. I cannot succeed here. Even if it's an international venture, I'm not sure if people work here for me. Let me go somewhere else. Because you are in the international marketplace. There is globalization. You can move somewhere else. So I think the solution, if you want to continue to grow your country, anyhow, is to practice these principles in an Asian context, because there's one thing. I'm not sure against all the questions.
What about the bribery issue in local government to overcome that bribery? There's a question about
Classic case of inspection. You need powerful anti-corruption committees and commissions with vast investigative powers to investigate. People who engage in corruption is always somebody who knows that people can come forward and leave an anonymous tip. And these are the ways to start to address that. It works everywhere. It's not going to be perfect. Certainly not. Certainly not. But the objective is to reduce it.
There's also a question about this procurement in terms of cost, time, and transparency. Because the lady questioned about there's some effort by doing e-procurement, this kind of thing, and to address this is consider about time, transparency, and cost. And what is, in your opinion, about how to address this corruption in the procurement sector based on your observations, and research?
The academic research is clear. The reason we need procurement is to reduce the opportunity. You have a record to increase the inspection. You reduce and through inspection you can try to reduce the incentive. So all the areas that one thinks about where corruption has been reduced is like practice licenses, procurement. Procurement is the most accountable by source. I'm not quite sure I answered the question totally.
Okay, I'll leave it at that, but I will give Dr. Balacitra, you want to add about corruption, especially in the business sector, or other perspective that you want to bring in addressing these whole questions from the audience?
Okay, thanks for listening. Maybe I just answer first the question from Margo. IGV is basically international joint venture. IGV, international joint venture. And IGV structure, what I mean here is the organizational structure. Because in, for example, like in China, the government regulation is that the BOD will be 50-50. Mean that so we will have 2 CEO, 2 CFO, 2 production director, everybody is 2. That makes already some difficulties in the way how you work together. But in general, I would say that in terms of the structured governance, we need to think about how to do the right organizational structure within the BOD, or how the board of directors working together with the board of commissioners, and then how is the whole supervision system in the international joint venture for decision. Yeah, up down to the lower level. How is the structure? Yeah, that's what I mean. I think in terms of the corruptions, usually we try to take a look from the cross-sector perspective, because this is where I'm coming from. The difficulty is more about later on if you do it like across borders. So in some countries, some things we would say that it's still not about corruption. Between corruption and personal equity. So what are the reasons? Because I know that a few years ago, in Germany, Siemens had a big corruption case. Then suddenly the company regulation became very tough. That even you cannot invest money for coffee. But if you do some business in Asia and you cannot invest your business counterpart for coffee or for breakfast, for lunch, then it will be quite difficult. And also some of the terms is quite difficult to say where are the borders. That's what are quite challenging.
Thank you, Dr. Bora. This will be the last round because we're approaching for lunch event. Is there any next 3 questions from the audience? Okay, this lady, please, the microphone. Those who will give the microphone, this lady, and then there's a student over there. Yeah. Okay, one student. Is there anyone else who want to give questions? Oh yeah, the man at the back. Okay. Please, madam.
Okay, thank you for the chance. Actually, this is a very good presentation. I'm happy today is here and we get very good presenters. And this is one thing that tickled in my mind. Theoretically, Evans mentioned about the theory of anti-corruption. First, reduce the opportunities. Maybe we can do it through the policy, through the system. And the second one, reduce the desire. That's quite intriguing because it's very personal and very dark, you know. And the third one, increase inspections. But again, it depends on who will do it, who will commit to do it. And the fourth one, increase public awareness. Maybe through the community, you know, massive, you know, media, like social media, we can use it. So it comes to my mind, if we want to reduce the corruptions, eliminate and that's increase the ethical practice, it's very much depend on the leadership. If the top position not really commended, all of this one, the 4 theoretical concepts will be dismissed.
What's the question?
Yeah. So my question is, I would like to know about the leadership. In the countries that's with high corruptions, you know, trust is difficult. And then attitude and habit is not there. So Horace also explained about the leadership readiness. But I think some more, you research more on managerial skills, managerial experience. So we would like to know more on leadership itself. So my question is, how to eliminate, reduce the corruption in the countries where they are really marked as, you know, hires with the corruptions.
Okay, thank you.
So that's, thank you.
Okay, then the next question is the students at the back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Rizky Muhammad Fadila. I'm an undergraduate student of Fakultas of Administrative Science. I'd like to ask Professor Berman, in your conclusion, you stated that anti-corruption needs political support. But how if the political support itself then trying to weakening the anti-corruption agency? Okay, thank you for the
So you're saying that the political support is lacking?
political support itself that trying to weakening the anti-corruption agency.
Okay.
How do you
Okay.
respond?
Okay, thank you. And the man at the back for the last question. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is to Professor Bruno. I really interested in your expression about the ecosystem of integrity. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more about that? For instance, how does it can work properly in the Asian Pacific country, maybe, or like what is the anti-corruption agency in the system? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for this last round, 3 questions. Perhaps Dr. Bora will start answer the first question because it is mostly addressed to you.
Okay, thanks about the leadership readiness. What I was talking about was more particularly talking about the cross-border issue, meaning how far is the Asian leader are ready for international business within the region. In that context, if we try to relate with the corruption issue or bribery issue, one of the challenges later on is if you go to another country, sometimes people will just say that bribery is a culture, this is a culture. Then how should you deal as leaders? How can you make this kind of decision? As I was in Germany, I did a lot of this kind of cultural awareness trainings, preparing the Germans to go to Asian countries. Then one of the most important common question that the German always asks, Laura, if I go to China, if I go to Indonesia, and there is common practice that you have to give money, what should I do as a German? Then this is like some of the challenges as leaders. How far you can insist, and then how far understand and differentiate. Is it like common cultural practice in that country, or is it really already corruption? And in that case, for me is I did like some courses at INSEAD, and then the professor for ethics at the time told us one thing that for me is quite interesting. He said that in order to decide if it is like some corruptions or it is something that you can do or you don't want to do it, then just imagine if what you did now appear in the newspaper, do you shame on yourself or not? So in your family, if you don't shame, then you just do it. If you are shame of that, then you don't do it. And that's a good tips that I got during the courses there at INSEAD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for an excellent answer. The last 2 questions, I will let Professor Berman to address that about the lack of political support and how the anti-corruption agency will work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, those questions are right on target, of course, and that explains why sometimes these are further along than others. This is just the truth. We're living in a democracy, and so having political support is just very important for them. Let me be a little more specific. I will go back to your question about how to reduce desire. Say desire is very personal. Yes, it is. But the fear of punishment leadership matters, so when you have leaders who don't care about that, set a bad example, that will influence from the top down. The research is very clear about that. This is the world that we live in. That's why you want those positions are very important. And actually should be taken with due care.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the full of thought from these two distinguished speakers. Give again one more time for a round of applause for these two distinguished speakers. Now, obviously, we're going to have the next session that we've been waiting for, which is lunch. So, I'll let the MC do.
Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for the pleasant plenary session today. Thank you very much for our dear speakers and moderator. Thank you. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, after this, we would like to have a gift of appreciation. So please, for our dear speakers and moderator to be in front of the stage to receive the gift of appreciation. Firstly, we would like to please welcome Professor Dr. Eko Prasojo to give the gift of appreciation to Professor Dr. Ethan Byrne. Professor Eko Prasojo, please welcome. Internasional as our moderator, and of course the Dr. Chita. We would also like to kindly remind that the session will continue with the fourth parallel session at 1:30 and will be followed by the closing ceremony at 4 p.m. We would also like to remind that for all of our dear participants, the certificate of participation can be received after the closing ceremony around at 4 p.m. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, after this, we will welcome the break, and we hope that all of us can enjoy the lunch break that we have already prepared. Once again, thank you very much, and see you on the next session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Apologize, I have to change the schedule as the chair said. I have a double job here, presenting paper but also an organization. My presentation is actually from part of my dissertation. So it will analyze about the governance reform that was conducted by the technocrats under the Jawa Barat. Okay, next slide. So in this paper, I apply a political pluralism theory, which initially developed by well-known political scientist Robert Dahl. And actually, the political pluralism approach was applied on the classic books by Herbert Reed in 1962, which he analyzed about the political dynamic, including the constitutional democracy under Sukarno era. But then this approach is also applied for the New Order era. For instance, John Weston, Adi Susastro, Bill Riegel has produced analytical work using this political pluralism approach. And two well-known economists like Ann Booth and Paul Hill also produced marvelous work about the technocrats' effort in pushing a reform. But they are more emphasizing on the economic side than the political side. So the article is aimed to fill in this theoretical gap in which we cover the whole New Order era and also emphasizing on the effort by the technocrats. Because the available literature by President Susastro, although marvelously analyzed about the political dynamics of the technocrats, but they're not covering the complete New Order era, some portion of the era. Okay, next slide please. So the methodology, I use archive research in Indonesia as well as in UK. I dig in the diplomatic cables from the UK embassy and the Australian embassy. I also use laws and regulations, and I also interview some key political actors during the New Order era. This is a photo of the two well-known technocrats, Professor Emil Salim and Professor Subrata. Professor Emil Salim used to be the Minister of Environment, while Professor Subrata used to be the Minister of Mining. I also use secondary sources, newspapers, Indonesian newspapers, Kompas, Pedoman, and Bicaraya, as well as Indonesia's and international magazines, Tempo, Far Eastern Economic Review, and Asia Review. Next slide, please. So the content of the article, as you know, the birth of the New Order era, in which Suharto has a momentum using the incident in September 13, 1965. But I'm not going to delve about the communist group yet because it's not the scope of this paper. In short, that Suharto was able to consolidate his authority and made Sukarno forced to resign at the time, in 1968. So in short, Suharto was in power in 1968. And next slide. And of course, the challenge when he was in power is that the political and economic situation is very bad. Some of you must have experienced the economic crisis in 1998. This is perhaps the baddest economic crisis in 1998. So Suharto relied on these technocrats, well-known academics from Faculty of Economics, who was led by Professor Wijoyo Nitisastro, and they were in charge to responsibility in terms of macroeconomic and monetary policy. And of course, Suharto, as a clever president, he doesn't want to let the technocrats dominating the economic policy. So he also accommodated some other groups, including conglomerates, political bureaucrats, and indigenous businessmen. And usually the technocrats was influential when there was a crisis. For example, when there's a crisis with the fall of oil in early 1970s and early 1980s. Next slide, please. And of course, during the initial part, the first rivalry is the military business. Military business at the time was led by the CEO of the oil company called Pertamina, and also the CEO of the National Logistic Company, Major General Tito Sugiro. So what this general do is that they create a patronage outside the state finance, so that Suharto can be supplied funding for his political operations outside the state budget. Yeah? So that's why Suharto can build state office, hospitals, and so on using this patronage provided by this military business. Next slide. Yeah, this is Ibnu Sutowo, the famous CEO of Pertamina. And of course, as I said, because of the prowess of this Ibnu Sutowo, the technocrats are having a difficult task. But then, of course, after the oil crisis, Pertamina was caught up in the debt, big debt, and they almost what we call unprofitable significantly. And of course, due to that, technocrats have to fix this problem, and they have to negotiate with the international creditors, and later Ibnu Sutowo was forced to resign. Next slide. But then, after the military business, there's also other powerful forces in the economic policy. For instance, the Indonesian conglomerates. The close one is in this photo. Lim Shulam is the close friend of Suharto. He supported Suharto during his early military career. And in the end, at the height of his power, Suharto gave a lot of monopolies, concessions in many business areas. And that's why at one point he became the richest man in Indonesia. Next slide. And of course, there's what's so-called a cukong practice, in which the businessmen act as major financiers, and the bureaucrats and military leaders enjoy significant increased wealth from both their own political group and their personal benefit. So this is like win-win relations, but it's outside the system. I think that's what makes the problem with so-called the patronage. And the one that is the point guide for mobilizing this funding from these conglomerates is Suharto's special assistant called Sugiono Mardani, who is his close friend during the military career. And of course, this rivalry create a political tension, and one of the tension, including the major demonstration in 1974, in which there's a riot broke in Jakarta, in which there's a major demonstration against the Suharto personal assistant, who is seen as a powerful and influencing economic policy. Sorry, next slide. Sorry. In short, there is a tension between technocrats and conglomerates, but I think in this context, the conglomerates is too powerful, because in the end, they were not able, although there's some reform in terms of liberalization, their regulations, but the impact is very limited. Next slide. And then, of course, there's another rival, political bureaucrats. This is another group, another Suharto trusted aides, but he has a different constituent, which is an indigenous businessman. And they are quite politically savvy, and of course it gave a hard time for the technocrats in pushing a reform. Next slide. And this indigenous business actually is more politically astute, because they are part of the political elite, not just like the Chinese conglomerate, they only focusing in business, but this one, they play also actively in politics, so they are, in the political sense, they are more influential. Next slide. And in the end, there's a demise of technocrats. Sorry, the chairman, taking much of your time, but I'll try to conclude it quickly. The demise of the technocrats, of course, this one, the Habibie, the technology minister who is trusted by Suharto, but Suharto knows that Habibie politically weak. So that's why, I mean, even though he gave a lot of privilege, but in the end, he doesn't have his dependency on Suharto is too strong. He only used Habibie to appease what's so-called Islamic modern group to join the ruling party. But India, as we know, there's a financial crisis in 1998. The Technocrats are trying to push a reform but through the IMF, but it's so too ambitious and unrealistic. And then, of course, more importantly, not supported by Suharto, so they're not become more influential. Hold on. This is a conclusion.
Okay.
Sorry. Of course, the Technocrats was credited for bringing a reform through 1990s, but in the end, they only one of the group of the other influential group in terms of economic policy. So their effectiveness was solely dependent on Suharto. Next slide. And they are only influential if there is a major crisis. And of course, once Suharto not supporting him, they become very weak. Next slide. But in the end,
Any conclusion?
this is the last slides, I promise. I promise. In the end, we can conclude that Suharto economic patronage are largely still intact and breeding and sustaining corruption, and therefore the Technocrats' effort to curb or contain corruption was pushed by the Technocrats had only a very limited impact. Thank you so much. Sorry for the chairman. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Commissioner Juwono. So the next one will be Roberto Juan to present the demolition trends in state building under authoritarian and democracy.
Okay, good morning everyone. So I'm going to stand here and maybe just try and cycle through the slides myself, as I might end up skipping a few. My name is Roberto Four, and I'll be presenting some research that I've been doing recently on trends in state capacity or state building around the world. So not just looking in Indonesia or even in ASEAN, but around the world over the last 20 years or so. If I can also get this, there we are, good, okay. And so what I'm really interested in is not just the sort of democratic dimension of governance, but how are states actually performing. So when we look at indicators like rule of law or control of corruption or ability to deliver public services, how democracies and new democracies in particular been doing since the 1980s and 90s, and how does that compare to how authoritarian regimes have been doing. As a sort of backdrop to why is this of interest? So as I guess we all know, there's a huge upsurge in the number of new democracies around the world since the 1980s in countries such as Indonesia, but much more broadly, such that the democratic or liberal democratic form of governance has now become the most widespread form of government arrangement. But at the same time, there's been a lot of concern over the last couple of decades about the performance of new democracies, and a general sense that in many new democracies, particularly in East Asia and Southeast Asia, in Latin America, in Sub-Saharan Africa, that many new democracies have not been performing as well as they could be. There's been a certain amount of disappointment regarding the levels of corruption and the inability of the state to deliver public services. At the same time, there is now a sort of growing literature about what is so-called authoritarian resurgence, which is to say that not only have a number of authoritarian regimes around the world managed to survive at the end of the Cold War, but that a number of authoritarian regimes appear to be thriving in the sense that they're doing better in delivering public goods, have a good record of economic growth, and sort of more weighty influence in international relations. But there's been very little empirical data applied to either of these topics. Certainly, very little applied to the second of these hypotheses. So what I've been doing is just looking into the data and see what is actually going on. So what I'll present this morning is just very, very briefly. I'll just be showing you some time series trends using the worldwide governance indicators, looking at that in democracies and new democracies and authoritarian regimes, and then try and give some sort of explanation for why we see the trends that we do. For those who don't know, one of the indicators I've been using this morning, the government effectiveness indicator. What goes into it? There are some measures about quality of bureaucracy, say the Economist Intelligence Unit, and measures of quality of public goods delivery. So there's a series of measures in there about the extent to which the country is covered by basic and universal public goods, as well as some measures for particular regions about the quality of civil service and the quality of the bureaucracy. So what's been going on? So if we just look at the last couple of decades, from the mid-1990s, if we just arrange countries around the world from their degree of democracy, where the higher level of democracy and the zero is a very low level of democracy, and then we have on the y-axis state capacity using this government effectiveness index. One thing that does come out is that indeed many new democracies have been struggling. So there's been a shift towards democratization and even some quasi-consolidation of democracy, but on the state capacity measures, a number of democracies in Latin America, for example, or in sub-Saharan Africa, like South Africa, have actually gotten worse. Whereas at the same time, the notion of authoritarian resurgence does actually come out a little bit in this data. So you can see that among very autocratic regimes, like Saudi Arabia or China or Iran, or the other Arab Gulf states like the UAE or Qatar, they have actually improved their scores quite substantially on government effectiveness measure, while nonetheless remaining quite authoritarian. Is that just restricted to a few countries? The short answer is no. So if we pool all countries around the world, so if we pool all autocracies in East Asia, the Arab Gulf, the post-Soviet countries, and we weight them by population, and just look at what those trend lines appear like since the 1990s, you can see that actually authoritarian regimes around the world have actually improved their scores on these measures, whereas third-rate democracies, which is that blue line, appear to be somewhat stuck in terms of state building. And we can also break that down by region. So again, taking all countries around the world, we can see that across major regions, the dark blocks here are authoritarian blocks of authoritarian regimes, and the blue are democracies. You can see that the only region actually in which new democracies have improved their measures of state capacity is Eastern Europe, whereas everywhere else the trend has been negative, up in East Asia as well. There's a slight positive there. But everywhere else has been negative. So I'm going to skip over this. I just did some more analysis to try and show what way it's all moving. Essentially, I put all of the countries onto that chart and then tried to create a kind of ocean flow analysis. Imagine each country moving across the space as kind of creating a current. And then you loop over 160 countries to see what is the kind of current that's produced by the movement of all those countries around that space. And then weighting by lot population, just to give these larger countries more of an influence. You can see the kind of broad patterns of the last 20 years. So you can see that very authoritarian regimes often started in very low level of state capacity, but moved up. So you can see China, Vietnam, Rwanda, Iran, examples there. There's a whole block of countries in the middle of this space that seem to be sort of trapped in transition. So these are countries that have democratized somewhat, but not fully, and have states that function somewhat, but not fully, and appear to just be kind of stuck there over the last 20 years or so. And that might be the case for Indonesia. It's certainly the case in much of Latin America and India, and you can see in there as well. So I won't dwell on that too much, but I can always come back to it. So there's sort of three questions here, and I should check how am I doing for time, by the way. Let me know. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, good. So I'm just going to briefly cover these three questions. Why have autocratic regimes improved on these measures? Why have new democracies failed to do so? And what does that imply for the health of democracy in third-rate democracy? So first of all, why have autocratic regimes improved? And I think basically there's two possible theories. One would focus on the external threat environment. That's a classic idea in Charles-Gillian and state building. The states invest in state capacity when they're under external pressure. And that's, if you think about, what's going on between Iran and the Gulf states and the kind of geopolitical environment that many autocratic regimes are operating in, you can see why that would prompt the kind of investment in state capacity. That might be an explanation, but I think it's actually much more the second of these hypotheses, that it's to do with internal threats to regime stability. That is why authoritarian regimes have improved their state capacity. So what do I mean by internal threats? Well, basically the elites in authoritarian regimes are worried about losing power. Why are they worried? Because there are actual protest events going on, such as, for example, we've got the Arab Spring, or the protests in Russia in the end of 2011 and the start of 2012. And that has prompted elites to make big investments in things like public sector reform, anti-corruption, in order to try and prolong their legitimacy, precisely because in an authoritarian regime, unlike in a democracy, legitimacy does not come naturally. Legitimacy does not come as a result of winning an election, so legitimacy needs to sort of be justified or earned. So here what we can see is those trend lines in government effectiveness, but just taking sort of 2010-11, which was sort of year of protests that rocked the world, Russia, Iran, Arab Gulf states. And then what happens to the government effectiveness index afterwards? You can see that there was this kind of jump in the years that, in the 5 or 6 years that followed, and that seems to have been the case across most world regions. Among third-world democracies, not much of a difference. And you can see as well what's happened in that that 5-year period. All of the countries that had the largest increase in effectiveness were all autocratic regimes. Belarus, Saudi Arabia, leading up that list. So these are regimes in which elites perhaps did feel a certain amount of insecurity and responded accordingly. Everybody knows about the anti-corruption campaign in China, 100,000 arrests, very big. What is less widely known is that pretty much every autocratic regime has followed suit in terms of that aggressive anti-corruption policy. So very shortly after the Arab Spring, Arab Gulf states set up anti-corruption commissions. They started going after some fairly high-profile officials. You actually saw in Oman, for example, senior ministers being sacked or imprisoned. Same similar story in Kazakhstan. Even Russia, which is very reluctant to do anti-corruption, has sort of made this a key platform of the present administration and brought down a number of senior ministers. Those seem to have been pretty effective. So we look at control of corruption ratings, we can see that authoritarian regimes really had a big jump over the last 5 years or so. What about new democracies? I'll skip some of this, state building historically doesn't really happen it rarely happens under democratic regimes. So if you look at the second volume of the Frost Report on this fantastic study, it sort of makes the point that most state building happens before democratization and afterwards. When we look at new democracies on control of corruption, again, you can see that since democratization, actually everywhere is done pretty badly except for South Korea, which is slightly improved. I was discussing that with Professor Choi over lunch yesterday. He said, yes, South Korea has improved slightly, but everywhere else has sort of gone downhill. I'll skip that. I'll skip this. I'll skip this. 2 minutes. Oh, okay. I'll go skip that. I'll go back. So I'll skip that one. So I'll stop on this one. So I think that the failure of state building in new democracies is something that is potentially very dangerous for the stability of transitional states, and that we're seeing the consequences of this now, with a kind of new brand of somewhat authoritarian populism, where leaders in transitional democracies put themselves forward as the strongman who will deal with the problems of corruption and who will deal with the problems of criminality. And we see this in public opinion, so that when people have been asked, would it be a good way to run this country to have a strong leader rather than to have parliament and elections? You can see that in many third-world democracies that percentage has gone up since the 1990s. It's gone up quite quite sharp in some places. So, you know, some country like Russia, you know, that in between those two survey points, you know, went and elected an authoritarian strongman. But you can see other countries here that are risky. Turkey as well, you can see there's a big increase. Turkey was first surveyed before the rise of Erdogan, and you can see that there's a big increase in this taste for strong leadership. So in many other cases, like perhaps quite worrying here as well, South Africa would be one that jumps out. Unfortunately, I don't have the data for Indonesia, but hopefully we will get new data for Indonesia soon, so perhaps see how that compares. So frustration with underperformance of democracy is something that I think is potentially quite dangerous and can have quite negative consequences. So just to round off, so the short sort of take home from this work is that, you know, the authoritarian resurgence literature describes a real phenomenon, and it's something that we have to try and understand, as well as trying to understand why it is that the new democracies have often been underperforming in terms of their public goods delivery, in terms of their state capacity. I don't, at this point, have any solutions to either of these to these concerns, but only to highlight that it's something that needs to be addressed as potentially quite dangerous for political stability going forward. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Action. Hello, good morning. My name is Patrick Ziegenhain. I'm visiting professor at the University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I'm here to talk about ASEAN Economic Community and its consequences for the local administrations in Southeast Asia. In this talk, I come to the conclusion that the AEC will change the, let's say, the capacity of national governments to control the imports and export, meaning the trade within a country. And I think that at the moment, the intra-ASEAN trade, which is about 25% of all trade within Southeast Asia, will rise up to 30-35%, and this will give new opportunities for the states in Southeast Asia to improve their competitiveness. There's also challenges, of course. The AEC will, let's say, reduce the capacities of the individual state administrations to influence the economic policy of the individual countries, but in the end it will also contribute to more trade within ASEAN and thus enhance the possibilities to create economic growth within Southeast Asia. That's my conclusion. Thank you very much.